Welcome to episode 1193 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, good. Mostly always. I know it's been a little
Yeah.
inconsistent for me, but some commitments, child graduation, vacation, um, different things like that. But here this week, and before we forget, won't be here next week because we both have different things next weekend. And so nothing next weekend, but it is heading into the All-Star break anyhow. But we can kind of talk a little bit about that as well as about what some things you can do during the All-Star break as well, because it's with that short scoring period, depending on your league rules, there's always some nice strategies to employ that week.
Yeah, this is like the week, next weekend will be the week for I know in Tout Wars we have a rule where like if you pick up a player, you have to start them. This is the week to stash people, or that is the weekend to stash
Bingo.
people, right? Like
That's exactly.
So, if you've been like, oh man, I can't really afford to take a 0 in a spot, maybe you can in the shortened week. I like to take the week of the All-Star break off. I literally go to a vacation every year where there's very limited internet and no cell phone reception. So that's how I'll be spending my All-Star break. I cannot stand the All-Star game and the home run derbies. Pretty boring for me. So I don't really care about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm indifferent about tuning into it. So we'll see. I don't expect much for home run derby unless they use some. I'm holding up a baseball for those guys watching the recording, and gals. Unless they use a different baseball for home run derby, I don't know what to expect in Seattle. I mean, ball doesn't really fly well there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like there. I mean, I've seen a little bit of the field. It's not like the prodigious power hitters that we've had necessarily in the past. So I'll be interested to see how it goes.
Hey, it's hopefully a great day. Like Tampa Bay is playing in Seattle right now, and it's been beautiful weather. They've had the roof open yesterday, which was like pristine. The one thing they were talking about though, the way the shadows creep across for an afternoon game. The shadows come in between the plate and the pitching mound towards the back part of the game. And that's the same time the All-Star game is going to be into play. So it's like, oh, great. Here comes, some pick a pitcher throwing 100 coming out of the shadows. That'll be fun. So it'll be curious to see how that, and maybe they shut it at, home run derby obviously is at night, but the All-Star game is supposed to be in the day, but maybe they keep the roof closed for that because of those shadows.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. But we're not here to talk about the All-Star break. We are here to talk about FAAB this week. We've got a little bit of news and notes to cover before we jump into kind of a mediocre week of FAAB. There's not a ton of pickups unless you're an NFBC. We'll talk about Jordan Westberg, who will be like the big pickup this week in NFBC. But ultimately, in most people's leagues, people probably already picked him up last weekend. Let's start with Royce Lewis heading to the IL with an oblique strain. Are you dropping Royce Lewis at this point? Typically, these injuries take about 4 to 6 weeks to come back from. He wasn't letting the world on fire to begin with. They did call up Jose Miranda. So what are your thoughts on Lewis, whether he's a hold for you right now? And then are you picking up Jose Miranda?
Not a hold. We are 51.2% done with the regular season. We had a lot of rainouts in June. There were fewer games played in June than July, so those games will be made up later. So we'll see some, but we are officially past the midway point of the season, and I can't afford to sit around and wait 6+ weeks on an oblique injury, especially for a guy who could get hurt rehabbing from that injury. So I moving on. I did have Miranda stashed in a couple of leagues. I traded for him in AL Labor about a month ago. He was a throw into that deal, and now I get to activate him and use him at my utility spot. So that'll be nice. And Miranda is hitting 7th today, so they put him right into the lineup with that. But I can't recommend just holding on to anything with the obliques because of the time it takes to come back from that injury. And that's a little longer for pitchers than it is hitters. But those are always injuries you can aggravate. And so, no, I'm moving on.
Yeah, I'm moving on as well. I know a lot of people will spend a lot of FAAB on Royce Lewis, but this is, don't fall into that sunk cost fallacy where like, oh, I've got to keep him because I spent a bunch of money on him. chances are he's going to miss about 6 weeks, which is pretty close to half of the remaining season. And this is an injury which people kind of re-aggravate all the time, and he could end up missing more time than that. So move on from Royce Lewis in a lot of formats where you can't stash him on an IL. I'm not super interested in picking up Jose Miranda unless I really need batting average. He doesn't have a ton of power. He doesn't have any speed. I don't know what the playing time situation is going to be like there for him. He's not great defensively either. So I think unless you really need batting average, which is what he provides, he probably isn't going to move the needle a ton for people in terms of moving in the standings. So
I was just really talking about mono leagues. I don't feel Miranda's mixed league viable right now. I mean, AL Labor's 12 team. And so 12 team AL, so I'm using him there, but there's a very good chance that Kyle Farmer could take over that playing time. I mean, yes, last year Miranda hit for batting average just fine. This year he hasn't. He hasn't done it in the minors. He hasn't done it in the majors. I mean, he was hitting 255 down there in AAA St. Paul. So right just on the other side of the river. He wasn't even hitting well for an average down there. And so he could lose that playing time to Kyle Farmer, who has already shown this year he can handle the hot corner and has showed what his offense is capable of. He's currently one of the 3 players. You look at our depth charts, he's one of the 3 players in platoons where Edward Julian and Max Kepler and Joey Gallo are playing against righties, and then Farmer and Solano and Taylor were playing against the lefties. So I guess it's Miranda's job to lose today, but Miranda's in there today versus Cole Irvin playing right now as we are recording this. So he made the lineup today instead of Farmer. So maybe we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, he hit in his at bat in the second inning, hit the ball pretty far, but in Camden nowadays, with that wall being out where it is, pretty far is not far enough. So it was a fly ball that ended up getting caught. But maybe
I hate that park. I hate the way they've changed that park. I mean, it was absurd how it used to be, but it's really bad now.
Yeah, they probably should have put it somewhere in the middle of where they ended up doing it, but it does help pitchers. My Tyler Welch,
no doubt, it's helped them.
Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells have benefited from that park, and they're on a few of my fantasy teams, so I'm okay with it. Shane McClanahan goes to the IL with a back issue. I mean, this isn't super surprising. I think we talked about, he had injured himself last week. We were a little bit worried about what this could mean because we didn't really have a ton of information on it. How worried are you on this back issue, or do you think this is kind of like, hey, All-Star break's coming anyways? Why don't we make sure you're right for the second half?
Bingo. He's going to miss one start. The way I look at it. So I watched the game on Friday night. What I was encouraged with is the velocity was there. And that's what got him out of the first game was, his velocity was down. And that's why they came and took him out of the game. In this game, the velocity never suffered. What did suffer was his command. His fastball command was not good. It wasn't like he was overthrown, but it just, as somebody who never misses one of his starts, he didn't look good. And that for his command, the changeup, which is normally a great weapon for him, he really, the ones he threw, because the Mariners were really dialed in on the fastball because the curveball just was not there. When anything he was throwing breaking pitch, was really having trouble locating it. And I don't recall, the only swing I do recall is the one Tom Murphy hit by 400 feet. So that's the only one I remember swinging a breaking ball. So Seattle was up there going, I'm looking fastball, and if I miss the changeup, I miss the changeup. I'm also looking to take fastball the other way. They have just hit a bunch of opposite field hits in the series, too. So that's where I am with that. You and I were joking off air. They're running out of pitchers, and this is not the week to run out of pitchers because Philadelphia and Atlanta are coming to Tropicana Field this week, heading into the break, and both of those teams are just punishing offenses right now. And so I don't know what they're, they don't have anything. I could see multiple opener games and trying to throw arms unless they've got some acquisition they're looking to make like today to get something. I don't know what they're going to do heading into the break to cover this because there's not really they may have to call up Charisma. No, it's not the name I'm thinking of, but I'm drawing the blank on the name. The Criswell. That's the other guy that's on the 40-man roster, or Josh Fleming. It's going to have to be like that. And it's, this was already going to be a tough matchup. Not like you would have benched McClanahan against in any start, but this was going to be a rough week. And the only reason why I think they're going to have to do something else is because it's going to be a rough week. I could see them making a few moves from Durham, and that's kind of why I'm wearing the Durham hat today. Hey, we need you to come on, because it could be a long week for the bullpen heading into the All-Star break, where they know these guys are going to get some days off anyhow. But that still doesn't change what you can do in day-to-day usage. Like, you can't go out there and say, you threw 25 yesterday, I need another 25 from you today, and I need another 20 from you the next day. It's going to be a rough week if you're a fan of my favorite team.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys are going to be. Interesting to see. But hopefully this doesn't linger into anything longer for McClanahan, because he has been amazing all season long.
This is the All-Star game. That's the sucky part for him, because he could have pitched in it again. Hopefully it doesn't derail his Cy Young chances like it did 2 years ago. Who am I thinking? Somebody was on the case for Cy Young. Who am I thinking of that was just cruising, and then
I'm blanking.
Sucks.
I mean, he was last year until he got hurt in August when he had the shoulder issue.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay, it was just him. Yes. All right.
Ji-Hwan Bae goes to the IL. So, I mean, obviously in a lot of formats, he might be a drop in your shallower leagues. But this brings Brian Reynolds back from the IL. Any thoughts on either of these moves?
I have both in XFL, so it was like a whoop, quick switch, moving them in there. So that worked out well. I just got back one, lose the other. And, Bay has been nice, obviously, when you look at the surprising amount of stolen bases that he's been able to contribute. But, he was terrible in June. He had 5 stolen bases, but he had a $159. He was only in my lineup to cover another injury that I was dealing with. So the stolen bases, 15 of the 20 came before June 1st. And he is 10 for 65 since the start of June 1st. So you've been carrying him for those steals at a cost. And now you get to, reevaluate. Hopefully you have a DL stash type of thing, but you can reevaluate things with him. But that's not pretty.
Yeah, he's been kind of a frustrating guy this season, just because I've never known when to use him, right? Like, you put him on your bench, he has a hot week, steals a bunch of bases, you put him in your lineup, he goes cold and doesn't steal very many bases. And so it's been a little bit frustrating. I'm probably dropping him I'm dropping in probably 10 or 12 team leagues. So I understand if you are as well. Last thing on the or actually we've got 2 more things on the docket. Aroldis Chapman was traded to the Rangers. Any chance he becomes the closer in Texas, or is he just firmly kind of depth behind Will Smith?
So Texas has had his problems in the bullpen overall. Will Smith has provided it some stability. I also don't know how they can consider Aroldis Chapman in the closer role, given that he's walking 6 guys per 9 innings. That's just not a nice number for closers. You just can't. You can't. I mean, this is all the same things when Kimbrel was going through his issues. There's no way you can deal with that kind of inconsistency. It's like, it's the right move. They needed to go get him. I know that Paul was high on Cole Reagans coming into the season, and so it was a nice move for the Royals to pick up Chapman as they for what they got. So I like that part of the trade. I just don't see this changing Chapman's fantasy value. But this is what I've been saying for months now. Yeah, the velocity's back with him, but everything else that we hated about Chapman is still there in spades. The walks, we're talking since 2021, his walk rate's like 5.7%, or 5.7 per 9 innings, not even percent. I'm sorry, it's a double-digit percentage number. No, I'm as much as my favorite team needs help. I'm glad that not dealing with that they didn't go in that direction. So. No, ultimately, I think this is a lateral move for him. But if you were holding on to Chapman thinking that he was going to get traded into a closer role, I think you were wish casting that one.
Yeah, I at this point, I think he's, maybe a backup for Will Smith, but I also think that the Rangers probably aren't done adding to this bullpen. They're competitive. One of the main spots they can really improve is in the bullpen. So I'd be very, very surprised if they don't make another move at the deadline.
He's now Amir Garrett. I mean, Amir Garrett was the second hard-throwing lefty in the bullpen, and Aroldis Chapman is now Amir Garrett. He is the second lefty in that bullpen.
Yeah.
Or at least even more. Well, yeah, Brock Burke. Yeah, he's just another lefty in that bullpen.
Yep, I agree. Carlos Rodon had a rehab assignment through 3 2/3 innings. Went well. It wasn't high A, but are you picking up Carlos Rodon and stashing him? If I can't imagine anybody's dropped him, but if someone has dropped him, are you stashing him right now?
Yeah, I would. He was. Maybe somebody has on a 12. I have him in a 50 draft and hold. So I have him there. I haven't been able to use it. So I'm like, sweet. He is going in my lineup. This is what I'm talking about. Finally. Somehow I'm still second place in that league despite losing him. And I don't have any other pitchers. Like I was going through the list of how many dudes I've lost in that. I was like, ooh, I got to make a lineup switch. Who can I put in? Oops, I don't have anybody. So yeah, I've got Rodon in this lineup, but if I were to swap him out, these are the only healthy pitcher I have left in this team, in this league, is Chris Martin. Merrill Kelly, Jose Leclerc, Jake Odorizzi, Dylan Lee, Davis Martin, Garrett Clevenger, and Robbie Ray. So I'm in second place in a league where Robbie Ray and Carlos Rodon were my first two pitchers drafted. And I have had a total of 1.2 innings from those guys. So that's the craziness. So I was pretty excited to get Rodon back, but I would also say, I feel like I'm going to throw up in my mouth a little bit here. Kudos to the Yankees for still having a winning record despite not getting anything for him yet. And Aaron Judge's current situations, like the fact that they haven't completely gone in the tank, you got to give them kudos. All right, got that off my chest. But yes, I'm rather excited to see Carlos Rodon do something because it's fun when he's good, and it just stinks how he got hurt right out of the gate. And yeah, I'm being selfish. I need it for this team. I would love to win this league, and him being on my bench all year has not helped.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that the Yankees have, the record that they do. Currently, they're 46-37 entering Sunday, considering they lost Carlos Rodon before the start of the season. They lost Frankie Montas before the start of the season. Aaron Judge has been, in and out of their lineup all season. I mean, they're currently right now, they've got the corpse of Giancarlo Stanton batting cleanup, Jake Bauers, Billy McKinney. Like, if you had told me that Jake Bauers and Billy McKinney were going to play big roles on this Yankees team this year, I would have told you they were easily the worst team in that division.
Well, throw in Willie Calhoun too. Don't forget that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it has not been pretty for them. So, kudos to them for being. And Nestor Cortez, I forgot, he's been on the IL for quite a while. I believe he just had his first he's about to start a rehab assignment. I believe he just started pitching off a mound. So hopefully they can get him back because I've got some teams with him on there. All right, that covers all the news and kind of notes that we had coming into Sunday. Let's talk about some FAAB. The big one in NFBC is going to be Jordan Westberg. Like I said at the top, a lot of leagues where you can pick up guys who have not debuted yet have already picked him up. So for them, they'll just have to hear kind of our thoughts on Westberg kind of moving forward. But how aggressive would you be in FAAB on Westberg in leagues where he's still available?
So, I'll say this. When you sent the list of guys over, I thought we were back to playing the game of reliever or politician because a lot of these, you said earlier that, it's kind of a light list. You're not joking. It's like, it's so top heavy. And this is why it's top heavy. That's the crazy part. You look at the names, I'm like, I think that guy's my local congressperson. I don't think that's a real player. And so I thought we were there. So with Jordan Westbrook, obviously we know what all the pedigree is with him. The fact that he's got, he's been raking for a bat. It seems like every other ball he's putting in play is going for a hit right now. And you always love, even if it's early on, when a guy is walking as much as he's striking out. I don't care what that sample size is. The fact that they're not coming up and just getting about it. So pedigree wise, I'm, what you're getting into. But the only reservation I have with him is where he's going to hit in the lineup. So far, he has been up for the week, and he's hit 7th or 8th while playing 2nd or 3rd base. And it's a good lineup. But when you're hitting that far down in the lineup, and you've got sometimes Anthony Ben Boom as the hitter behind you, how many times are you going to score? So that's kind of my only reservation with him, is that he's hitting in the bottom of the lineup, but honestly, no chance of moving up in the near future unless somehow, like Ryan O'Hearn. If you would have told me Ryan O'Hearn was going to hit cleanup at any point for any team at this season back in March, I would have laughed at you. But here he is hitting cleanup 3 of the last 4 days for Baltimore because he's getting the job done there. But if that comes up, then maybe Westberg can elevate himself in the lineup. But Aaron Hicks has also found new life in Baltimore, which is also putting him, his skills are sitting there in the lineup, and he's been hitting 4th, 5th, or 7th in these situations. When he hits 7th, Westberg's hitting 8th. So that kind of sums up things. I like him a lot. I just don't like the fact that he's hitting the bottom third of the lineup. That those plate appearances, not getting those 4 to 5 plate, or he's going to get 4, but not getting the 5 like some of those other guys do. Those add up over the course of a back half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, especially in a park as Kyle Farmer goes to the warning track in Camden, which is unfortunate for Kyle Farmer.
Been gone in 29 other parks.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing with Westberg. I like him as a prospect, but I also don't think he necessarily has like a carrying tool in fantasy, which means like he doesn't have prodigious power. He doesn't have a ton of speed. I don't know that he's going to hit for an extremely high average. And so for him, in order for him to be viable, especially in your shallower mixed leagues, like he needs to actually get a lot of volume. And so hitting 7th, 8th is kind of an issue for him. And I think people are going to go pretty crazy tonight in NFBC bidding on him. And I'm just not going to be able to do that. Like, it's just, this is going to be like the Gavin Williams situation, I think, last week, where I was kind of tepid on him in terms of how much I'd be willing to spend, which means I wasn't going to get him. And I don't think I'm going to end up with very much, if any, Jordan Westbrook. I just don't know that he has the carrying tool in fantasy to be super impactful rest of the way. So, and hitting 7th or 8th in that lineup, in that park where it saps, some of that power because those fences have been moved back, I think are a big issue. So I wouldn't go overboard on Jordan Westbrook. I know a lot of people will, but that's just kind of my opinion.
By the way, Kopech is not starting today. I don't remember if we were talking about that before he went on air, but he is being pushed back due to rest.
That's unfortunate for me. All right. Oh, well. Took the 7-watt game to my ledger, and then I don't get a start against Oakland. So I don't know who he screwed over in the organization to let them. But it's a start again.
A train wreck. I mean, I was looking at my latest article at RotoWire. Was looking at hitters, like looking at the trading market just for hitters, and looking at expiring contracts or teams with player control. And when I looked at Chicago, they've got Grandal and Andrus as UFAs, and then they've got Tim Anderson with a club option. Tim Anderson clearly doesn't want to stick around, and Grandal and Andrus.
Did you see his grand slam yesterday?
No, I didn't.
So Tim Anderson hit a grand slam, and then it was overturned on review. It would have been his first home run of the season. They called it fair, and then it was challenged and overturned.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean, it was like the biggest Charlie Brown trying to kick a football moment for fantasy managers. Been waiting on that first home run from Tim Anderson. Get a grand slam out of it. People are going crazy in all my group chats, and then a couple minutes later, it's overturned. So, yeah. The next guy on the ledger here is Dominic Fletcher. You may remember him as the guy who came up. No one had any clue who he was. Was hot for a little bit, hit 306, and then got sent promptly back down to the minor leagues. Any interest in Dom Fletcher, who's hit 325, 417, 497 with 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases in AAA this year?
LOL. Yeah, this was like, this is my local congressperson. I think this is him.
Mm-hmm.
But in all seriousness, there was Eric Longenhagen just did the Arizona prospect thing. It just ran about 10 days ago, and there's a nice piece in there. It talks about Fletcher and how he is a mighty might type of guy. And how he is, like he mentions in the article, is like he's got his arms are much bigger than somebody who should be 5'9". And all I could think of is like Earl Stroman, Marcus's dad. If you've ever seen him, you know what I'm talking about with that. But he doesn't have one particular carrying skill with it, but he does a lot of things well. And you look at what he's been able to do as a hitter in the minor leagues, and he has done a lot of things. He gets on base, hits for average. Doesn't hit for power despite the big guns. Hasn't had a lot of stolen bases. So for fantasy purposes, this could be runs and this could be batting average. And anything else comes, take it for what you take it for whatever you get out of it. But I don't know what could come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is very similar to what I was just talking about with Jordan Westberg in terms of, in order for Fletcher to have fantasy value, he has to play every day, and he really needs to hit towards the top of the lineup. I don't think he's going to do either. So, unfortunately, I think there are going to be people who pick up Dominic Fletcher this weekend, but I don't know that he's going to have a big enough impact. That outfield is loaded. Corbin Carroll will be back at some point. I think as soon as he's back, I think Fletcher could end up going back down. So, no real interest for me in Dominic Fletcher this week. And we're going to be saying that probably a fair amount on this episode, because then we move into a guy who definitely could be your congressman, and that's Blake Perkins, who has been called up by the Cubs, first baseman, third baseman kind of type. Any interest in Blake, up by the Brewers, outfielder type? I'm actually confusing him with a different guy I got called up, but he didn't put on the list. Any interest in Blake Perkins, outfielder, who's actually playing a fair amount right now?
He's played every day. Now here's the thing: he hit first in his first game, and then he's been 8-7-5, 8-8-7-8-5. So the good news is they're playing him every day. The bad news is there's not much here. I mean, he has been. When I was looking through him, outside of his congressional voting record, the Nationals, the Royals, the Yankees, and Milwaukee, we're talking about the fourth organization, and he's had some seasons where he's done some running, and then this year has not been one of those. And so the numbers have kind of been, just looking at what we see here, my guess is that defensive value. I have never seen this guy play. I got to be completely transparent. I have never seen him, but nothing off this page is jumping at me. But the fact that he's in the lineup every day means I have to at least consider him and put him in my waterfall option in like maybe a 15-team league, or if you're obviously a 12-team NL, even a 10-team NL, if the guy's playing every day, he's got to be somebody you consider, because you're probably carrying somebody in your lineup who's on a short side of a platoon, or even in a platoon and is only playing and maybe is stacked against the wrong matchups this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty good defender, but other than that, like, there is speed in the profile, but like you said, he just hasn't utilized it a ton. Again, I don't know that he's super, super interesting, but this is kind of the week we've got. The guy I was confusing him for was Jared Young, who was a 28-year-old first baseman called up by the Cubs. But I ended up not even putting him on the list because in spite of the fact that he had 13 home runs in 210 plate appearances in AAA, I mean, I just don't know that he's I mean, I guess he could get some playing time and maybe on a strong side of platoon, but deepest of deep leagues, if you're looking for someone, Jared Young might be the guy in NL only that makes sense for you. Matt Vierling, though, he's a guy that might have some interest. He's actually played fairly well as of late. Any interest in Matt Vierling?
Yes, I would take a chance on Vierling if I'm in a league where I'm looking for just volume. He's got has some decent pop, has some decent speed with things, and he's been in the lineup 5 of the last 6 days, and he's hit leadoff in 4 of those games. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, he's kind of taking over a little bit the leadoff spot for Zach McKinstry, who until last night had just gone completely ice cold. Went off last night, but Vierling, I think, is one of those guys that, again, doesn't have necessarily a carrying tool in fantasy, but if he's leading off and playing more days than he's not, he does start to become a little bit more interesting, especially in 15-team leagues, but even in some 12-team leagues where like you maybe need some runs scored, need a little speed, maybe a little pop. He can do a little bit of everything, and if he's leading off, that makes him a lot more interesting. So Vierling's a guy that I would target in FAAB if you are kind of looking to fill that 5th outfielder spot. Last hitter on the docket, Bryce Terang recalled Luis Urias got sent down to the minor leagues because he was struggling so bad. Terang is hit well at times in the minors, and we know he's a pretty good defender. There's a little bit of pop, but a fair amount of speed. Any interest in Bryce Terang in his second go-around?
He's been playing every day since he's got called up, 6th or 7th, so he's been out there every single day. Like you said, if I'm looking for speed, then it's something I have to consider. I mean, he has 11 steals this year, but he kept coming off the season. We're getting 34 in AAA. So if Milwaukee will put him in motion, then yes. But this could also be a very quick cut for you if he comes back up and looks completely overmatched again. I mean, we're talking he has almost 200 plate appearances this season in the majors and a 54 WRC plus. So if you are hurting for speed, I think, Justin, were we talking earlier off air, like you have one of these teams that you have a lot of speed and you need power or vice versa. It's like in that kind of thing, you may want to take it and see what happens and try to build your speed from there. But otherwise, like he's a good, if you have stolen base needs, Vierling is a better target. And then Terang is like part of your waterfall on that.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, like almost all my leagues, I need power. I don't really need speed. Like I have plenty of speed, and no one will trade with
plenty
me.
of speed around the league. I tweeted this out this morning. We're 51.2% of the way on the through the season, and we're looking at over 3,500 stolen bases when it's all said and done. The league stole 2,486 last year. I mean, so we're talking about a 42% increase in stolen bases. When it's all said and done this year, which even the most aggressive, I remember predicting 3,302 stolen bases in one of the articles I wrote up. I ran it by Derek, who's the smartest number dudes I know. And Derek was like, I'll take just the under on that. And it's like, looks like we both missed by 200 steals if things continue to do what they are. And the league shows no signs of slowing down. I mean, hell, Jose Ramirez stole home there today on a straight steal of it because the pitcher wasn't paying enough attention to him. So we're seeing it, and this is why we're seeing games like 19-4 and 14-5. There's just more runners in scoring position, and the teams they can see the ability to take these bases, and they're doing it.
Yeah, they are. Next guy is Daniel Hudson. This is an interesting one. Daniel Hudson was the guy that I was kind of targeting as the main closer, main 9th inning option in Los Angeles prior to draft season. And then he got hurt, and he has been hurt ever since. But he is now back, had a good first outing, 14-pitch outing when he was activated on Friday. Can Daniel Hudson regain the closer role in Los Angeles, where they've been pretty much going by committee led by Evan Phillips?
And that's the thing. I mean, they've just kind of been rolling through. Hudson was phenomenal when they got him last year. His numbers last year were absolutely phenomenal in that capacity. And they used him to get 5 saves, 2 wins. But from the skills perspective, the numbers were fantastic. The velocity everything looked great. And then this year got hurt. So we will see. And he, like I said, just made it back. So Now, early on, I'm noticing that his fastball velocity was 95.5, where he was sitting 97.1. So let's see how that comes back. But yeah, again, there's nobody nailed down here full time. I would consider this like a trade acquisition for them. When they're looking at what they've been going through at this point, maybe they don't. And to be clear, there's not many options out there. There's not, unless you want to go get Scott Barlow. And Kansas City may have a high asking price, but there really aren't that many options for them. With Liam Hendricks injured again, that takes him off the market for that, because the White Sox would have been smart to go ahead and try to trade him. If Boston wants to say, okay, hey, Kenley Jansen's a free agent after next season, let's go ahead and test the market and try to trade him. Maybe the Dodgers go back there. But other than that, Trevor May, Trevor May has picked up a handful of saves for Oakland. But when I was looking through this 2 weeks ago, it's like, what are you going to do? What are we doing here? There's just not a lot of options for bullpen help. So you're looking to build it small pieces. And this really serves like a trade acquisition for them. And if he shows that he can work, I think the only thing we need to see is how can he work back-to-back nights type of thing before. Otherwise, he just becomes another name in the committee.
Yeah, I do wonder. Would a team like the Nationals look to move like Hunter Harvey or Finnegan?
Yes,
but
they should.
They're not there's not the impact guys that we're kind of used to. I think the other question is Josh Hader's a free agent, and the Padres are 11 and a half games back of the Diamondbacks right now. Are they going to end up being sellers? They were kind of favorites to compete in that division and in the National League. Clearly, they have put themselves in a pretty big hole, because they're 8 games back of the Giants, who are in third place in the division. So, I wonder if Hader becomes an option for teams looking to make deals. Though I don't know that
the crazy thing about it. The Padres playoff odds, as I'm looking at the standings, are 24%. That's where they're saying just to make the playoffs. To win the division, that's like a pipe dream, 3%. Clinch wild card, 21%. Make playoffs, 23%. That's where I'm just like, I don't see it. They need a Cincinnati type winning streak to get this moving. So I think there's going to be a lot of come to Jesus moments during the All-Star break, where these front offices are sitting down and saying, okay, put the blue light special on for all the old folks. Remember the Kmart blue light special? Stick that out there. It's time to sell and go that. And so that was certainly, I forgot that his contract status, that would move the needle if he were available. But that said, into a final year of a deal, there's only so much. It's a game of chicken. Now it's just fine. I want this. No, a few years ago, I can see his face and everything. I'm drawing a blank. The Yankees GM, Cashman. Brian Cashman was able to get Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman, and then go sign Aroldis Chapman after that. So it's that's the kind of thing you'll hear is, well, hey, they were able to get Gleyber Torres from the Cubs and it won them the World Series. So, why can't they go get this guy from that team, or this guy? Why can't they go get, not the Orioles need him, but why can't they get Jordan Westburg for a Josh Hader? Like I said, if the Orioles, as if they needed another guy like that at the back end of their bullpen. So we'll see where it goes, but certainly between that, because the Padres certainly don't have. When I looked at the hitting side of things, it's when I looked at their contract situation in the article that I recently published, their hitting side was not. Oh, Padres, where'd you go? Here we go. Nelson Cruz, Gary Sanchez, Rougned Odor, and Matt Carpenter. Those are either their unrestricted free agents or player options that are not going to be exercised. That's it. So it's, if they're not going to be a contending team, then I guess it all has to come down to that.
I guess the other team, now that I'm looking at it, that might be able to trade a closer is the Mets. The Mets are 18 and a half games back in the division, and they're 10 and a half games back of the second place Marlins in that division, which is a weird thing to say. David Robertson, there's a cheap little closing option, or even Adam Ottavino, who's a guy that could get
all bit rolls. I mean, honestly, when I look at the Mets, the guy I'm focused on is not even pitching; it's hitting. It's Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham's been raking here over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and now that it's becoming fantasy football season, you obviously want him in your league. So that's we'll have to get that moving on. But Tommy Pham, in all seriousness, has been raking. And this is where, like, if they were to trade Tommy Pham, who is in his walk year, then that opens up the playing time for Mark Vientos. And so that's something else you could consider as we were talking for that short stash next week. If somebody is cut Vientos and you have to do something, that's something to consider. But for me on the hitting side, it comes down to Tommy Pham, Andrew McCutchen, and who's the other name I was drawing a blank on? There's 3 guys. Andrew McCutchen, Tommy Pham, and Heimer Candelario. Those are the 3 names I see on the hitting side that could make a difference in multiple lineups right now. The only thing is, outside of the Pham for Vientos, I don't see what playing time that's going to clear up for anybody else. It's like, oh, hey, this guy got traded, so let me jump over here. I mean, if Candelario gets traded, what does that open up at third base for the Nationals? But I could see
Carter Kieboom, baby.
Oh, yeah. I could see Candelario as a nice fit in Miami. Could see him as a nice fit in Milwaukee. I mean, they're playing Brian Anderson there at third base, who is better used in a platoon situation than he is full time. And that's why you're seeing Brian Anderson's numbers come down this year. But Candelario would be a great fit there. Cleveland, always looking for on-base skill because it's too much single stuff. They could use McCutchen. They could use Pham. Minnesota could do the same type of thing. So that's kind of where I'm focused on the hitting. But I believe this trade deadline is going to be more about pitching than anything else. And like you said, Hader, if the Padres kind of hold the keys to the kingdom here, because I also have Blake Snell's contract situation to look at, and I believe Blake Snell is a free agent after this season if I have this right. And so there's 2 of the biggest names you could have out there as on the market. But other than that, I really do expect it to be a quiet trade market because so many teams are still hanging around the periphery of these races, and these 2 terrible central divisions are part of that.
Yeah, Snell is a free agent at the end of the season, so that could be a really interesting name if the Padres do decide to sell. Like I said, I think they need a pretty big winning streak here coming out of the break in order for them to really make some hay in the NL West, considering how stacked it is at the top with the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, and the Giants right now. Next guy on the docket is a Giants pitcher, Alex Wood, going to get the Rockies at home this week, so I think he's going to be a popular stream pickup. Any interest in Alex Wood?
Yeah, that's what it is right there. The Rockies on the road. Looking at their lineup, that situation. Trying to tie in some of that future stuff. When you look at their contract situations, they've got Charlie Blackmon, Randall Grichuk, CJ Cron, and Jurickson Profar all as unrestricted free agents. Cron, normally we're like, oh, cool, he's at Coors, this helps. Well, that hasn't really been the case this year too much, but he's been dinged up. But all 4 of those guys could be on the move. And I only bring this up because maybe that opens up the Michael Toglia playing time if one or more of those guys move out. So I wanted to bring that into play, but the Rockies are already a bad team, and they could get a lot worse in a hurry if they start moving all these guys and calling up some of these other guys that they have in the system.
I agree. I think, anytime you get the Rockies who are on the road, I'm willing to attack them. Alex Wood, decent pickup this week. Mike Soroka came back, had a decent start versus the Marlins, really got overshadowed by just the amount of home runs that the Braves put up on Miami. Any interest in Mike Soroka? He has a pretty good start this week, I believe, against at Cleveland.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, at Cleveland, because the one problem Soroka has is the home run. It's always been there. Cleveland doesn't hit them for the most part. So yay. And you have to almost, as somebody who's in 2 different leagues where I'm just hurting for wins, I can't buy them. I'm taking anybody Atlanta puts on the mound and just hoping they get me 5 innings at a win, because that offense, I saw a stat this morning. They've had more 5-run first innings in the last 2 weeks than any other team has had all season. It's like they're in a massive heater right now. It's obviously getting really hot in Atlanta weather-wise. Ball's traveling more now. So I'm just they could bring Rick Camp or Bob Walk out of retirement and put him on the mound. I'm going to try to roster that pitcher and get wins out of him. And understanding that it may hurt everything else. Like the other day I mentioned, I finally got a win out of Lance Lynn. What did it cost me? My ratios. I mean, he got blown up. I got a win, and I needed that win more than I needed the ratios.
Well, if you're interested in Atlanta pitchers and you don't care about your ratios, Colby Allard has returned, former pitching prospect. He had a pretty good start in his first start back. Didn't factor into the decision because he only went 4 2/3, but he struck out 8, allowed 3 hits, 1 walk in 4 2/3 scoreless innings. Any interest in Allard against the same Cleveland team in Cleveland?
Same thing I just said about Soroka, I'm applying to Colby Allard. Same exact, he pitches for Atlanta, he passes the test. That's the if-then statement for programmers. If he pitches for Atlanta, yes, you use him. That's where I'm at with these guys. Maybe it's just out of selfish desperation, looking for wins in multiple leagues. Even the one I have, Carlos Rodon, I'm dead last in wins in that league, dead last. And I probably can make up 4 points the rest of the way, and that's if everything goes right.
Yeah, I mean, Allard's a guy that I actually really liked when he was kind of coming up to the minors, and he just really, really struggled with walks and home runs. Now he has done a better job in recent seasons with the walks. There's still been homer issues, but again, Cleveland's a team that so far, well, I only pitched 6 2/3 in AAA before being called up, so he must have been coming off of an injury, but. No home runs given up yet in the minors or the majors. So I guess that's a good thing. And you're going up against Cleveland, like you said, doesn't like the home run or doesn't like to hit home runs anyways. So might be a good time to stream. I prefer him over Soroka. I like Mike Soroka. I'm going to probably be in on Mike Soroka next year as kind of a cheap pitching option, but he just doesn't get enough strikeouts to matter in fantasy, especially now halfway through a season. He can't volume his way into being valuable. So I'm not as big of a fan of Soroka unless you're just kind of win-seeking, like you said. Final guy to talk about is Ronel Blanco. Again, this is just a streaming pitcher that we're attacking the matchup because Ronel Blanco is getting, I believe he's getting the Rockies. So now I'm looking at the probable starters. Is he not getting the Yankees? I might be wrong on this. Getting the Rockies on the road.
I thought he was, but
I thought he was too, but now I'm not seeing him.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it now either. Valdez maybe he is because Valdez got pushed back. So I don't think Valdez is making that start on the 5th. So I think that's going to be Blanco's start.
Okay, so if he does get the Rockies, who are starting their first road series.
Oh wait, take that back. No, he's not getting it. He just got optioned to the minors this morning.
All right. Well, then that is going to wrap us up.
I just saw a note that Sean Dubin is now up, and Sean Dubin is getting the start. He is starting today. So Sean Dubin's facing Texas, and they've now moved JP France and Framber Valdez are getting those starts against Colorado.
All right. Well, that answers that question. So that's going to wrap us up for this episode, I guess. A little bit, like I said, a mediocre FAAB run. Hopefully that tides you guys over for 2 weeks. Jason and I will be back in 2 weeks. What else you got going on? Where can people reach you on social media?
Yeah. So hanging out on Twitter as long as this stupid thing works. Also waiting to sign up for a Blue Sky account because I have an invite. Thank you, Jessica. I'm just waiting for them to reopen sign up so I can play around.
Send me an invite once you get one.
I can get one in. I just need a site that pays its bills, and so they don't have problems with DDoSing themselves as they did yesterday. So yeah, doing that and need to figure out writing topic this week. My last 2 Collette calls have been about the expiring contracts or player options for pitchers and hitters, looking at what the trade market is going to look like. And so I can honestly see the next few pieces being trade evaluations as some things hopefully start happening. I mean, I talked about this with Todd and James on the final fantasy baseball show of the season on XM yesterday, by the way. What a load of shit. Anyhow, talk to him about that. Is like, and this applies to fantasy baseball too. If you can make that trade now, there's more time for that player to have an impact on your roster, whether it's fantasy, whether it's real. And so like these teams waiting it out until the end, there's only so much they can do. And yeah, there are a couple divisions where some of these teams have big leads and whatnot. It still doesn't matter. You got to get comfort level, all these different types of things. I would love to see some more trades and do what Kansas City and Texas did. Do that now. Hopefully that lights a spark and we see some of these things because looking at some of these teams, and like we mentioned the Padres, it's like they have to get on a heater and it's got to happen now. And watch the Padres, and Joe Sheehan did a great job about this in a recent newsletter. They're terrible offensively. All the talent they have, and they are the worst team in the league with batting average of runners in scoring position. The absolute worst. They are 25 points below Oakland and Detroit. Like, think of your team and like, oh, they suck with runners in scoring position. They don't suck as bad as the Padres do. And so I would like to see them to be like, Preller's like, all right, I haven't made a trade in a while. Time for me to do the whole Jim Carrey fingers thing, stretch up my fingers and sit down and start typing out offers. It is time to do that. And let's get some movement happening so we can see what happens with the rest of the season.
You can reach me on Twitter at Mason FWFB. If Twitter still exists by the time this is posted. I literally just signed up for Mastodon, signed up for a post. I put in a wait list request for Blue Sky. So if you have a Blue Sky invite code that you'd like to send me, feel free to hit me up on via DM on Twitter, just Mason FWFB, or email me, justmasonfantasy@gmail.com, because I'd like to check out the Blue Sky and see how that's going on, because Twitter is insane right now, unfortunately.
I just hate the fact that every time I go into a reply, it's like all I see is blue check marks first. I'm like, I'm looking for other people, and all I see is like this, and most of it's garbage, and then I'm like, I'm out, losing interest. Moving on. I need to see.
My wife was going crazy because she hadn't seen like the whole like limiting non-blue check mark accounts to viewing 600 posts a day or whatever it was. And she hit that mark at like 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that and could not see anything on Twitter after that.
Well, that was, it was just yesterday. And that comes, they were basically DDoSing themselves because it was making calls to servers that they either hadn't paid the bills for or they had shut down, and the people who set the work up were gone. And so there were a few TikToks and different people are like, hey, let me show you what was happening. It really came down to just being cheap and eliminating people that actually knew what the configuration was. So let that be a lesson to business stuff. But it appears to be working fine this morning. But I'm looking at it yesterday going, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Especially with like free agency, July 1st, being free agency in some certain sports. Like my son was trying to track hockey stuff and it was driving him nuts.
Yeah, no, it's not good business practice. But you can read my written work over on Fangraphs and Fantasy Pros. I'm record here and the Friends Fantasy Benefits podcast as well. I'll be taking off the entire week of the All-Star break. So if you're looking for questions or answer questions or read articles of mine during that time, I won't be around. So, but you and I will meet back up in 2 weeks, hopefully. So, and then we will continue to take you through the rest of the season. For Jason, myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.
Yeah, have a great, safe weekend, everybody.